Welcome! Today we are talking about the books that I read in January and February. Welcome to my channel. Right. So this is The Ship of Destiny, and I love this book. It's the last book in the Flagship Traders trilogy, and I don't know how to talk about this book and not give you spoilers. At the very start of this trilogy, the first human character that we meet is Kenneth, and he and his shipmate person are on an island, and it's mysterious. To be honest, right, I had to read, I think it was at least that first bit twice, maybe the whole chapter, I'm not sure, but it threw me so hard. I didn't know what was going on, I didn't know who these characters were, I didn't know what world we'd be in, I had no clue what was happening. This book gives you so much more insight into what that island is. Malta, who we meet in the first one as well, Ship of Magic, her character develops so much, and she becomes one of the characters that I found myself really enjoying reading. And that wasn't my experience at first when we first come across her at all. She starts out with this really spoiled, entitled, expectant child, and she goes through a lot of stuff, and it matures her, and it changes her perspective on herself most of all, because she's so entitled and she thinks that she should have all these wonderful things, and her dad really spoiled her to make her think that too, Kyle. But then when he goes off on the Vivacia, which is the family's live ship, when he goes off on his adventures on there, Malta's left at home to live with her mum, her little brother, and her grandparent, her grandmother, I think. And it is her grandmother, I don't know why I said that. Yeah, and they're trying to arrange basically a marriage for her. Like, they're trying to find her a suitable match to get her married into a good family, because her family's in debt, they're losing a lot of money. You find out about that as well, and the politics behind all of that stuff, which personally I wasn't that into. I didn't love the politics. At times it was really heavy, and there was pages and pages of it. For example, I did find that this book was about, the first half of it was really focused on that family, the Vestrit family, and what they were trying to do to deal with the attack on their town. There'd been a big attack on the town that I won't go into because it is complicated and I don't completely understand it, but also there's massive spoilers in that as well. So yeah, she's basically stuck at home. She doesn't like to be there. She wants her dad to come back, and basically she misses him because he spoiled her so much, in a nutshell. And she's having to be disciplined more with her grandparent, especially. Her mum has a lot going on, but she's pretty self-involved herself, and they also have like the troubles obviously with the family finances. I haven't even said a word about Wintro, and Wintro goes through so much. He goes through so much. I think he's only like 14, and I know that Fitz goes through a lot as well, from an earlier age than Wintro. But he is such a significant character in these books for me. I loved his story in The Mad Ship. Fantastic. Done so well, and so, again, unexpected. But he's a nice character. He's a really lovely character. Trying to do his best, trying to make the best of a bad situation that he's finding himself in through no choice of his own. He's been ripped out of the monastery because he wanted to be a priest, but his dad's like, oh no, I'm going to make you come and be on my ship with me because he's a meanie. That's Kyle again. We hate Kyle, okay? But Wintro is a sweetheart, and he has to endure some really crappy things that happens to him. Really, really awful things. When he's trying to do his best, or he's just stuck in a bad situation that he can't get out of. And it's really awful. Because of course it is, because it's a Robin Hood book and she hates her characters. I always think about earned moments in storytelling. Ever since I was watching the making of, it was one of the first God of War games, and Cory Barlog was saying about how there was a moment that that Kratos, I can't remember what happened in the story, it's one of the early ones. Basically there was a scene with Kratos early on in one of the early games, and he was confused as to why people didn't get it, people weren't moved by it. And then he realised that, you know, he'd like looked at the story again and realised that he hadn't earned it. Kratos hadn't earned whatever that scene was, storytelling. It didn't pay off. And that opened his eyes up to be like, okay, well, if we're going to have this big scene, we need to lay the foundation. We need to get the story there. You know, you can't just lump these things in and then just expect people to have this, you know, emotional response to it. It needs to earn its place. So with Paragon and Kennet, you know, having their moment together, showing that love, having that understanding, and everything being explained, and it was just so worth it to get there. So things like that I love about stories. It's one of my favourite things about stories, is when you get that payoff and it works. And that, for me, worked fantastically. So, we need to talk about Amber. We do. We need to talk about Amber. I can't talk about these books and not talk about Amber. But how much to say about Amber is the question. If you've paid attention to some small details and some obvious things, then you understand Amber's not all that they seem to be. There's more to Amber, and we've maybe seen something along the lines of Amber before somewhere else. But yeah, there was mystery again around Amber, and the thing is, throughout the entire of these 3 books, the thing that I'm trying not to tell you was never actually said, but if you put the dots together, then you can figure it out yourself. And if you know what they are, if you know what I'm talking about, do not spoil it for anyone, because it's, again, you gotta get there. You gotta wait for it. Let it play out. Let them ride the waves. You know, don't give it away. Mysterious character, important character, far more important than it appears, really, on any of this. Any of these books, she is far more important than anyone knows. Towards the end of this book, there's definitely more and more hints at it, which always made me smile. Always loved the little hints at it, because I'm like, oh, I see what you've done there. That is, oh, I love that. I see what you've done there. That's really good. That little hint is fantastic. Unfortunately, I did find out about Amber from another YouTube video. So, be careful what you're exposing yourself to if you don't want spoilers. And that's why I'm trying to be really careful with these books, because I hate spoilers. I do not want to know anything. Let me experience it myself. Because once you know the spoiler, you can't forget it, and then you see it coming, like, oh, okay, there it is. You don't get the moments, you know. I need the moments, you know. That's what storytelling. That's what really good storytelling is about. You know, those moments. I can't give you a simple review of this book. All I can tell you is to read it. All I can say is read it. Do not expect it to be anything like the Far Ship. The Far Ship? The Farseer trilogy. Do not expect it to be anything like that. Think of these books when you very first start reading The Ship of Magic. If you've read the other three beforehand, go into The Ship of Magic thinking of it being a completely new series and book. Do yourself a massive favour there and think of it in that way. Do not expect it to carry on from Assassin's Quest, because like me, you'll be like falling off the edge of a cliff, like, what? Free falling, not knowing where the cliff's gone and what you're falling into and what the hell is happening with these serpents. Because that's where you start at the Ship of Magic on these ones. But yeah, that's also something that happens with these, is you get to know the mystery of the serpents, of the dragons. You get to learn more about the Elderlings, and you get to learn about the Rain Wilds, and She Who Remembers. That's obviously a big old theme. I think that's probably at the start of Ship of Magic. They're looking for She Who Remembers. They find her. It's great. It's fantastic. Which also reminds me of something I've been meaning to say about with these books that I'm noticing. I'm now on Fool's Errand, but last night I was flicking through Assassin's Apprentice, and I keep noticing how important an emphasis is put on names. And in these books, names are huge. Names are so important, especially with the serpents, especially with the serpents. That names are massive. But I've also noticed that at the start of Fool's Errand, Fitz asks the Fool what his real name is, and the Fool won't tell him because it's too special. You know, it's too much of, like, it's a power thing. He doesn't want to give the power away by letting him know his true name. And that is such a theme in these books, in this trilogy. Fantastic. And also I noticed that there was something similar, very similar, in Assassin's Apprentice. So it goes back to even that. You know, that it's not as simple as just a name. There's more to it than that. And by the way, I still don't even know what Fitz's birth name is. You know, is that something that we're going to find out? I hope so. I don't know. The Willful Princess and the Piebald Prince. What a story. Weird. It's weird. It's not what I expected. I didn't know it was going to be... I thought it was going to be really quite light-hearted. And, I don't know, just a nice little tale about the wit and the skill. And I knew that there had to be something bad that happened, because the wit is so frowned upon. More than frowned upon, but you know. But I did not expect all that happened in here. I mean, it's crazy. Tiny little book, massive story. Huge story, and really prominent for the Realm of the Elderlings books. You have to read this. Especially if you've read the Farseer trilogy and you think, there's a lot of people that don't like the wit. It's really bad. Don't tell anyone you've got the wit. Keep it under wraps. It's bad blood. Don't talk about it. It's bad. It's beast magic. No one wants to know about that. And in this book, you find out why. You find out why it's so hated. you get to know about what happened and why people hate it, and yeah, it's pretty messed up. It's really quite messed up. But it's not just a messed up story. It's a love story. There's a love story as well, and it's a book of two halves. It's a book of two stories. There's two stories. There's only two chapters, respectively. In here, and I thought that it was going to be very different to what it is. I remember when I looked at this in an earlier video, and I was like, oh, I bet these are going to be wicked to people, these animals on here. Thought it was going to be a nice little fairy tale kind of story. No, it's not that. It's not that at all. It's a lot darker than you think it's going to be. So what happens? Basically, we have two... I was going to say two main characters, but that's not quite right. It's a complicated story. There is more characters than you first think. Okay, so this is a picture of the prince and his horsey. You see how they're like mottled? That's the piebald. That's what piebald means. Is the effect on the horse's skin. You know. Right. So she gets pregnant, but she doesn't say who by, and then so does her friend. Her friend gets pregnant. She doesn't say who by until, and this is a big spoiler. Big spoiler, but I'm going to say it anyway. Because this whole story is just so messed up. I'm going to tell you what it is. If you want to skip this bit, then do it. I love talking about these books. I love so much. So, her friend gets pregnant. Said that. But her friend tells her that the piebald prince made her pregnant too. And I can't remember why she did that right now off the top of my head. But of course that makes a big old friction between them. She can't believe that she did that to her. Everything else, he didn't. That wasn't the person that she slept with. But anyway, the princess orders the piebald prince to go, and she sends down this servant person to go and get rid of him. And there's this altercation. They have a fight. And he ends up being killed by possibly his horse, we don't know, possibly the other person that was telling him to leave with his pitchfork, but he also kills his horse. He stabs the horse with the pitchfork in his chest, and then of course the prince gets killed, and then so the princess is distraught, and she's like, oh no, you killed him. Then she starts to have a baby. So her friend, who's pregnant, goes to her mum in panic and is like, what do I do? I found a cat. She's all wet. Did you go outside? So she goes to her mother, and her mum is like, quick, I'll give you these herbs to make you have your baby. Even though it's going to be really premature, but don't worry about that. All that matters is that you have your baby at the same time as the princess. Great parenting. And she's like, why? Why does that matter? And she's like, don't worry about it, just do it. Here you go. There's a couple of reasons, so that you can maybe switch them over and make sure that our bloodline is actually in the royal family, because well, why not? Why shouldn't we have that? And then second of all, because her baby might not survive, and therefore you can switch them over and make sure that she has one. Never mind about you. What? Yeah, so that's what her mother tells her to do. And she is like, oh, okay then, I better do that. Doesn't even really care about her own child. Because she then has a child and then has to look after both of them. They both survive. I can't really remember what happens to the princess, but she does die at some point. So then her friend basically has both of them to look after. And I can't really remember what happens after that. That was pretty much the story. But it was really weird. That was only the first part of the story. There's a second part of the story too. But her mum was just bonkers. Why would that be stuff that she would say to do? Weird. Very odd. Very odd. She needs a psychological assessment. I told you it wasn't what I said. I told you it wasn't some fairy tale that was all light and fluffy. It's dark. There's real darkness in this book. You know, and there's the history of it. Just one last thing that I want to say about this book is the placement of reading it. Absolutely recommend to read it before the Tawny Man trilogy. I read it straight after Ship of Destiny, and it was perfect placement, absolutely perfect, because the first, I don't know, few chapters, they actually talk about the piebald prince, and as far as I can remember, he's not mentioned before that. So really good placement for that. Do read it then, if you're going to read it at all. The insight that it gives is worth it. Alright, next we have The Railway Children, and that is nothing like either of these ones. This is completely different, nothing like these books whatsoever. This was the first one that I read from my last video that I did with the TBR wheel, the Kindle Unlimited choices that I had from there. This was the first one that I went for with that, and I liked it. It was light. It was an easy read. Nothing bad happened. No one died. There was no one manipulating other people to have babies and switch them around or anything like that. Nothing like that, thankfully. Easy going book. Slightly annoying that the children were so well behaved at the start of the book. I was like, I don't think that people are really like that. I'm not sure that young children wake up and think that they're going to get their breakfast ready for their mum. You know, and let's be good because mummy's had a hard time. It was like that a little bit, and I was pleased when they did something wrong. I was glad when they messed up, because I was like, oh, this is actually more realistic. Well, that wraps it up. That's the 3 that I read. Like I said, don't be too pressured by other people that you see that have read more than you. It doesn't matter. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Take care of yourselves.